Is God real? Jordan Peterson says yes. Richard Dawkins says no. We've had both Jordan Peterson and Richard Dawkins on our show. They're both men, academics, public speakers that I respect. Just for clarity and transparency, I believe in God. It's the most important thing in my life, to have a framework for my own conduct, morality, the way I treat other people, and what I do when I know that I fall short of the standards that a living and loving God suggests. I at least have measures: kindness, service, surrender, redemption, confession, all sorts of stuff. It really, really helps me to have a faith in God. But I completely understand that some people just are like, no, I don't like that. That's a tool of mechanism and control. If you look at British history, world history, you can see how religion's been used to underwrite atrocity and war everywhere. But I would say that falls into the category of politics rather than the category of religion. That's just the dogma or doctrine used to underwrite territorial goals. That's just my perspective, and one that I learned a bit from a university. I think I was at for a brief time. Anyway, so Jordan Peterson has said to Dickie Dawkins, as I call him, yeah, because he's like Professor Yaffle, this guy.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. What a tangle of old rubbish.
I like Richard Dawkins a lot. He was so lovely when he came on our show. He was so nice to my dog, so nice to me. But this is what JP has said in a tweet. Anytime you want to debate precisely this with any pretension to seriousness whatsoever, in any forum you choose, to any size audience, anywhere in the world, I'm there in a heartbeat. You don't know what you're talking about, sir, not in the least, and you're doing harm. Not good saying what you're saying, not least to science itself. And I'll donate the proceeds to charity if it's a ticketed event. This is what Jordan Peterson was reacting to. The God of the Old Testament is the most unpleasant character in all fiction. The opening words of chapter 2 of The God Delusion. See also Dan Barker's book with that title, which justifies it fully, giving chapter and verse. Okay, let's have a look at what Dawkins has said. Let me know in the comments where you stand on this issue. If you're an atheist, why you are, and if you believe in God, why you do. And remember, whichever you choose, I love you.
I mean, he's jealous, he's vindictive, he's callous, he's cruel.
And yet this is a God that is worshipped by, loved by, adored by, followed by millions, billions of people.
I hope not. I hope that the God that is adored by millions of people is a grown-up kind of God who is no longer... I hope that most people the kind of people I would like to know who worship and admire him, regard those stories as not literally true. Now, there are some who do regard them as literally true, and I suspect they either haven't read the Old Testament or they're not the kind of people I would wish to know, because you do not want to worship a character like that. By all means, worship some kind of great spirit of the universe, some kind of creative intelligence who created the universe, but don't worship this vile, vindictive monster.
Who is the obvious person to host this debate? It's me, isn't it? I've had Dawkins on, I've had Peterson on. Jordan Peterson is a friend of mine. I think I'm the perfect person to host this debate. Recently in our country, the Archbishop of York said that the words "Our Father" at the beginning of the Lord's Prayer are problematic because many of us have complex relationships with patriarchy, male authority, and fatherhood. But I would say, as a person that recognizes the challenges of patriarchy and authority, I do not like authority, and I understand why the term patriarchy would be used to establish and define that authority, because broadly speaking, historically and even contemporarily, it's a type of male power, you could say. You can let me know in the comments if you disagree with that. The reason I use the Lord's Prayer myself is because when I say "Our Father," what I'm focused on is the idea that we all share a common father, that we are brothers and sisters here. And how do you treat your brothers and sisters? Hopefully, although in the Bible sometimes they literally kill each other, like Cain and Abel, the first ever brothers there were. Hopefully with love and with an open heart. Hopefully in families, when there are conflicts, the intention is to resolve those conflicts, not to falsify and fortify those conflicts. The conditions of the material world are insufficient for me to feel connected enough, safe enough, loved enough to deal with reality. For me, spirituality and faith in God is a survival technique. That's what it is. It's not a dogma. It's not a doctrine. It's not something to tell other people. It's not leverage to control other people's lifestyles, sexual appetites, my own sexual appetite certainly, but not other people's. It's a means of saying that my role here is as a servant of the whole. And let me clarify so you don't mistake me for a pious person. I fail all the time. I slip up. But my intention is to try my best to be a kind and good man. Jordan Peterson is perhaps one of the most controversial public intellectuals that has ever lived, actually. But often what he is saying is there are values in tradition. I've argued with him about that publicly and probably will continue to. That there is such a thing as a male and a female. I've argued with him about the nature and application of those arguments, although biology I would contest, and any sensible person I think would say biology is biology. And he says that having some set of principles and some set of hierarchy is inevitable. That whoever you are, whether you believe in God, or not, wherever you stand on the spectrum of social ideologies, you do have a standard, even if your standard is there is no God. Take famous atheists, all of them use humanitarianism and humanism, which are derived often from Christianity, the ideals in them that human life is sacred. Like George Carlin, the great stand-up comedian, would say when critiquing the American Constitution, we have inalienable rights. What are these rights you have? And he goes, rights. And where did you get these rights from? God. Okay, here we go again. Why would you have rights? What is different about the human animal than a tiger or a stag beetle or a wasp or a pig? What are we saying? We're saying that consciousness itself affords us access to a set of rights, but similarly a set of duties and obligations. As C.S. Lewis writes, we are subject to a law that is unlike gravity or the laws of thermodynamics or velocity. We are subject to laws that are inward, i.e. all of us seem to know when we have done something wrong. And none of us argue about that, do we? If someone reaches ahead of you and snatches a sandwich that you were plainly going to take, they don't say, there is no law of fairness. They're saying, oh yeah, but I'm hungrier than you are, I'm going to give it to my children. All of us acknowledge that there are a set of principles that we're going to abide by. Now, an evolutionary biologist like Dawkins would say that these are based on ideas like reciprocal altruism. But we have learned over time that we need social relationships that are built on bonds of trust, and therefore out of selfishness, selfish genes, he says that the genes want to propagate themselves, not us as individuals. The genes from which we are comprised want to be propagated, and therefore certain behavioural strategies become necessary. But what I think you end up with there, in the case of Dawkins, is the same sort of cart before the horse argument that religious people are accused of. I.e., what I'm saying is Dawkins is like, there absolutely cannot be God or love. Now, how do I get there when it seems like people are being loving and good? Like, say, when we see a story like, person jumps into the river to save a drowning stranger and then dies. Like, oh, well, obviously that's because in the past you would have to be brave, otherwise you'd be kicked out of the tribe. They find ways of making beauty redundant. They find deliberate ways of stripping away the necessary conditions and tools of our advancement as a species. If you say beauty is not beautiful, if you say that truth is not truth, then you start to, I think, shake the foundations of humanity. Now, of course, the scientists would say truth is what they're primarily interested in. Truth and effectiveness of models. I would argue that spirituality brings people together. Religiosity can drive people apart. Spirituality is about accepting a oneness. Religiosity can be about this set of ideas is better than this one. I know a lot of you guys are Christians, and I love you for your Christianity, and I love our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ. However, personally, I would not prohibit arriving at transcendence or enlightenment via the teachings of the Buddha, who obviously presents us with an ideology that does not have a Godhead. Or our brothers and sisters, to quote my dear friend Cornel West, who would say that Islam is another pathway to enlightenment. Of course, Christianity has historically been used for dominion, for crusades, for capture, for plunder, for murder. And of course, Islam has people that have used it for comparable motives. And even, and it always seems mad to me when I see this, in places like Burma, Buddhism is used. The reason that I would align more with Jordan Peterson than Richard Dawkins is because I believe that what Jordan Peterson is trying to present us with are the values and the inherent power within certain spiritual doctrines and certain theological tropes, scriptures, and cultural assets. That if you value service above self-service, you might live a better life. If you value kindness above the pursuit of individual success, you might have a better life. If when you're alone at night, you feel like there is no meaning, consciousness is just an accident of evolution, a byproduct of complex networked processes in the brain, you might end up feeling desperately alone, and that your only hope is pleasure. And now we're just debating the aesthetics of the pleasure. Is pleasure for you to be stooped over some white powder in the company and entangled limbs of strangers? Or is pleasure for you a family model derived from the sort of Western post-Protestant ideas of what a nuclear family should be? Or is pleasure for you skiing or bungee jumping? Or is it success at work? The pleasure is a byproduct of doing the right thing from a spiritual perspective, i.e. sex generates pleasure because you are in a harmonious and loving and respectful relationship, or eating generates pleasure because you are allowing the machine of the body to continue to survive, that you may look after your children or serve your community. I don't agree with religion being used to prescribe the actions of others. I don't believe that religion should be used to say, hey, you lot, stop doing that over there. I think that religion should be used for, right, how am I going to behave today? And again, I always feel it's necessary to add, because I'm a person whose religion and spirituality spirituality has come from my own personal failings. That it's not about me telling you what to do. It's about me telling me what to do, that I can become sort of happy and connected because my separateness is not real. Perhaps the fundamental idea is that beneath the reality that we experience through the senses, beneath it, around it, within it, across it, there is another reality, a more powerful reality that is not subject to the senses in the same way, but is intuited and felt. That when we feel love for children or a friend or an animal or nature, a sunset, whatever, it is the reminder of deep connection, deep, not separateness. Many different cultural artifacts, whether divine or not, have sought to describe this experience, and how from this experience of numinism, the presence of the divine, the deep awe that we suddenly feel, the wonder that can come in psychedelics or suddenly seeing an ocean or some tiny miracle of the insect world, that this awe is somehow connected to ethics and moral conduct. That because of this sense of connection, we might be kind, we might be loving, we might be of service, we might not spend our life in the relentless pursuit of pleasure. Most of my spiritual values were taught to me as a result of my own addiction and alcoholism, so they are about controlling, recognizing, letting go of drives, and recognizing that my drive to pleasure and personal satisfaction is not the map, is not the agenda, is not the set of imperatives that I should be pursuing. But I think that what I have experienced extremely, although many people much more extremely than me, is relevant to all of us. That all of us on some level have to find a pathway. I don't think it actually matters if you're an atheist or not. I can't quite see how I would get there if I didn't believe that there was a different reality to the one we experience every day, that certain prophets have come back, have awoken, have realized, are attuned to this great oneness. I don't know how I'd get there in the same way based on arithmetic, algebra, measurements. Although, God, as many atheists will tell you, there's enough miracles in the cosmos, there's enough miracles in the quantum field to keep you fueled forever. And significantly, down there in the quantum field, the rules of physics as we understand them start to fall apart. So even the things we lean on, like gravity, velocity, momentum, these things start to not make sense in the quantum field. It shows you that perhaps reality as we understand it is just a local set of customs relevant and appropriate to our biological form and our geological and cosmological reality. It's just temporal and spatial, and that true reality is outside of space and time. Now, these are complex ideas, but you need a set of tools and a set of advisors and some principles to navigate, in my humble opinion. And Dawkins has offered us so much. He's taken the work of the Christian, Darwin, and Alfred Russel Wallace and shown us and extrapolated from those works how our material nature and our drives govern our reality. But what I believe Dawkins is missing is what is the crucible from which these things emerge? How does consciousness emerge from biological processes? Why is there this intuitive sense that we must be just, we must be kind, and we must be of service? And I think what Jordan Peterson is great at representing is it seems that these things are psychologically true. It seems that these things are socially beneficial. Jordan Peterson is a person that I could talk to for hours and hours and argue with on many, many issues. I know loads of you love him. I know loads of you hate him. But when it comes to this issue, I fall down on the side of Jordan Peterson. Let me know in the comments below what side of this conversation you're on, what your relationship with God is, or what your relationship with atheism is, and how we derive a shared morality together that is workable, whichever side of that argument we fall upon. The fact is, we're here together and we've got to find a way to get along. And plus, let me know if you think I should host that debate. Wouldn't it be fantastic?